Is that the empty seat? So we'll go ahead and get started. This is kind of interesting. I think if we had to have a rumble right now, it'd probably pretty match between panelists and audience. So thank you for coming in on the last day as things kind of wind down after lunch. We'll see if we can keep you guys awake as we continue our discussions about VR and AR. In this case, focusing on gaming video games and the opportunities, what's happening there, and how that may or may not translate into other opportunities outside of the gaming vertical. My name is Jason Wanacott with Wanacott Communications. It's not a coincidence. We're a PR agency that works with a lot of consumer tech, interactive entertainment, converging entertainment companies. And I have the pleasure of knowing most of the gentlemen on this panel for a while. And the gentleman in the front that's going to be heckling us, John, that was supposed to be on the panel but decided to heckle us in the front row. So that said, I'll just turn it over and we'll just go from my immediate left down the line if you guys want to introduce yourselves and represent.
Hi everyone, my name is UFA. I'm the co-founder and the CTO of Usense. We are making VR headsets that you can think about it as a super Google Cardboard. It is fully wireless with hand tracking built in and with head position tracking and AR capabilities.
Hi, I'm Danilo Mora. I'm co-founder of Loot Interactive. I'm super excited to be working on the game industry for the past 7 years. And before that, I was working on mastering content for digital movie theaters, Blu-rays, and DVD. And I always had this passion about mixing games and video content together. And for me, I'm super excited that VR kind of like lets me put the two and two together and really only get limited by budgets and time frames. But I feel like a lot of the new ideas that we always had in the past can be very immersive and creative for the audience.
Right on. Hi, everyone. I'm Clifton Dawson. I'm a co-founder in a company called Greenlight VR. Really excited about what we're doing. A few years ago, I was an MBA student, not particularly immersed in tech, but then started a technology company that didn't do very well, and happened to join 5 other guys who were working on a really cool technology that we opened up to mobile developers so that they could add capabilities into their applications. And last year sold that company to Snapchat, which is just down here, and was there for a really cool time in Snapchat's history of going from, a messaging kind of platform to something that's like much greater. And recently just fell in love with VR and the possibilities for what that means, 5, 10 years down the future, and found myself thinking more and more about what data looks like in VR. So Greenlight VR is it's the first company to really embrace metadata about VR entertainment and content. And so we aggregate it at web scale, and we offer it up to folks for all sorts of reasons. That's why I'm here.
I'm Andrew Prell. I herald out of Autodesk in the late 80s. I created Alternate Worlds Technology, which was the first United States manufacturer of virtual reality arcade systems, second one in the world to Virtuality out of England. We had the Reality Rocket, which had games like Wolfenstein VR, Cybertag, Blakestone VR, and then our Gen 2 machine was built on the Pixel Planes technology. It was called Xenomorph. So I still have some scars in my back from the arrows, being a pioneer back then. Since then, I've worked on infrastructure, and now we're putting it back together in a project for convergence of 4 dimensions, a project that's a cross-screen, cross-reality MMO. And if people want me to go into the detail of that, I can, but it might eat up a lot of the panel time. So.
And thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So show of hands, who's been to some or all, or at least one of the other VR sessions that we've had? Quite a few, right? So thank you for trudging through and getting to ours. You know, we were talking about it earlier, and here's the deal. Without kind of rehashing some of the stuff you guys have already heard, you know, I'm going to flip it and put the Q&A at the beginning and ask you guys, since you've been through it, is there any question that you haven't had answered or addressed, at least to this point, through the VR sessions that you guys have set in on? If not, then we'll dive in on our side. Yep.
I've enjoyed the previous sessions. I'm interested to know if the panel can highlight interesting applications outside of gaming for VR, or if they're not existing now, what they think could become in the future with VR outside.
Well, I was going to say that's the direction we're going to go. So I'm going to table that question because I think it's a very good topic, and we actually are going to hit on that. Absolutely. Is there anyone else? So that said, we have hardware. You do a little of everything on licensing, developing, porting, creating,
Publishing.
We have the analytics and data side, and then we also have the long-term tenured. It's the gray hair, I think. Having been in the early days of VR, what was VR? So that said, at least for where we are right now, I'd love to hear just kind of what, and I think Clifton said it best, kind of what made you start drinking the VR Kool-Aid? What made you believe that this is a path that you want to go down that actually makes sense?
For me, it was very interesting because I've been attending all the E3s for the past 7 years, and when I heard all the buzz about, you know, Carmack showing, you know, something interesting somewhere, I was like, well, it's Carmack, I'm gonna see it. And it was, the lines were so big, I just couldn't see it. It took me all the way to the end of 2012 to actually see it. And when I first saw it, I was actually impressed by how bad the quality was for me. And again, like mastering content, you know, like in high definition 4K for big movie theaters, and also always trying to push the quality to the best. When I saw like an SD screen on my face, I was like, I can see the pixels, like I don't like that. Like, and then I kind of like pushed back, and then I was like, okay, it's a really good idea, but it's probably not going to take off because there's a lot of other good ideas that, you know, came out of Kickstarter that not necessarily, you know, made its way to a big product. When I saw a few years later, in a really short time frame, but first being acquired by Facebook, I saw that, okay, there's going to be a lot of funding for that. And then when I saw Morpheus and I saw the Deep section that, you know, you have an encounter with a shark, and then I saw, okay, both at the same time I saw the high definition version of Oculus, and I saw, you know, that shark encounter on Morpheus. I was like, okay. And I also had the castle demo that you had your hands using the PlayStation Move, and it's like, okay, we figured out the input. There's a platform that's very clear that we can monetize. And, you know, gamers are not shy to put $60 in an experience that they feel like is very interesting. So all you have to do is create compelling experiences, and you know that you're going to have an audience that you can monetize. So to me, it was like seeing an evolution so fast, and having seen some of the latest prototypes, that to me, like I'm totally a believer. And the first one was the Deep on the Morpheus side.
What about you, Clifton? Because you came a very different route.
Yeah.
You're a recent VR Kool-Aid drinker.
Exactly. I'm like fresh. I attended all the panels to learn and get up to speed on the industry. But that doesn't mean I'm not like all in. I'm like totally all in. For me, the moment that I kind of turned, it was just thinking and seeing how kids consume content, like at a very, very intimate level. I was really fortunate to spend time at Snapchat, where I think it has a community of people who are consuming content in a way that is like different than most content consumption. And I think a lot of the really cool content that appeals to young folks is like super immersive and engaging to like the nth degree. And so when I think about what future, you know, entertainment in the future, it's like what are the kids going to be attracted to? And the last thing I'll say is, a few months ago, I was in San Francisco, and I was I stopped into a Pete's coffee shop to grab some coffee, and I saw a young girl. She was like 2-3 years old. She was with her mom, and she was watching. Her mom was there meeting someone, and the mom gave the daughter a phone to watch. It was like Snow White or something like that, and I don't know why, but I was fascinated by the girl. She didn't have an Oculus or any type of headset, but she got as close as possible to that screen, and she was tapping on it, and she wanted to be inside it. And for me, I was like, our natural tendency is to have as much of an immersed experience as possible. So that for me was the moment when I was like, all right, well, like entertainment on VR is like going to be something, and let's find ways to innovate and support the ecosystem of content quickly.
Andrew, Yue, you guys want to chime in?
When did how I drank the VR Kool-Aid? My gateway drug was Dungeons and Dragons. And then going to Autodesk in the height of their virtual reality. I actually spent a lot of time, maybe too much time, in the head-mounted display with the 2 cathode ray tubes that they sit right on the side of both of your heads, and the mirrors put them into your eyes. Then when you look at a picture of the corona from the cathode ray tubes, you realize that it centralizes right in the center of your brain. So that does something to you to really get you involved in that experience. But just the ability to truly get immersed into the story, to interact with the story, that really did it for me, and been pushing it ever since, I guess.
I think VR was started as not for gaming, but for example, for business and government, military use, for training, for modeling, for visualization. And only later, like today, we are reaching a point it is going to influence the mass audience. It is more, just an analogy, is more like the 3D graphics used to be SGI workstations, only for professionals. Then at a point like 1999, 1995 era, the graphic card becomes cheap enough so it can penetrate into the consumer market. Right now, we are at a similar point as of the virtual reality. And I think the application is very different from the last time. It's very wide. The first time I worked on virtual reality was in 2003. At that time, that was my first startup called the Infinite 3D. The idea is to make the desktop interface a 3D operating system. So this is just one of the use cases. I think it will happen with the current adoption of virtual reality headsets. Why? Because it makes the operating environment much more immersive, much more efficient. People can rearrange their documents, rearrange their applications in a 3D way. Another area I think is entertainment, non-gaming entertainment, like watching immersive videos, 3D videos, VR videos. And for VR, I think also gaming is very different from traditional way of definition of gaming. In VR, from what we have observed, it is a more passive experience. People can enjoy, change their mental state. So I think we did some research, and we can say classify VR applications into like 5 categories. One category is education, simulation. One category is communication. For example, talking with your friends at different locations and share with the same object, documents, work together. And another way is, say, experience, because VR is very powerful for changing people's mental state psychologically, more powerful than music and movies, so that it can make people happier or braver. That's very fundamental change in people's psychology level. And the fourth one is light games, not like heavy games, but more passive, light observatory games. And then the last is realizing people's dreams. Why people need VR, one important reason is there are some limitations, either financially or physically in this physical environment. With VR, people can realize their dreams, like landing on the moon.
Thank you, gentlemen. As far as current VR, and I know there's been a lot of talk about music and film and movies and videos and things like that, and you even mentioned government. And I know, Clifton, we have a mutual contact who does great things in a B2B environment with architecture and design. I hear about, maybe it's my world, right? But I hear just gaming, right? Why is that? I mean, I read a lot of newsletters, read a lot of websites, but all I'm hearing is VR for gaming, and really nothing else outside of this environment. Why is that?
I mean, I have a very, my point of view comes from just the data that we aggregate and we see and we monitor very, very closely. And I think one of the reasons that, you know, we're hearing a lot about games is because that's what the creators are making right now. You know, what I've been listening to a lot of the chatter and among you all. And one of the things that I hear often is, you know, there's no talent, or you know, there's a you know, there aren't that many people or companies doing VR, and that's not true. There are lots of indie game studios and people who used to work at Pixar forming their own little, you know, shop to make games and stuff like that, and we're seeing that. And I think, you know, because you have a lot of activity on by these 1 to 4 person game studios, you're just hearing about the projects that they're releasing, right? When you go to VR Focus or you know, any of these VR specific publications, they're talking about the stuff that their community is building.
I feel like in addition to that is there's still a lot to be learned on like storytelling and interactive storytelling. Again, interactive storytelling is actually not that new. Like DVD allowed that like many years ago. I'm not sure if you guys remember some of the early DVDs that allow you to choose like different endings and different, you know, paths on the story. But it just becomes like way more, you know, complex to produce that, and how you make something that people are actually willing to pay for when you have a production budget like 3-4 times. If you want to have 3-4 endings, then you're not going to be able to charge more. So I feel like there's potentially like a catch-22 in this environment, because the users, they are probably expecting to have pretty big productions, even on the music side, on the TV, or on the movies. And if they're not getting like that kind of quality, they may be, you know, a little bit, you know, frustrated. They're just seeing like small Indian studios like creating content. But at the same time, when you see big movie studios, the productions that they do, they can only afford to do that because they have thousands of screens in the movie theaters that they will be charging each person like $12 to $15 to watch the movie. So you need to find, you know, the way to monetize. So that's more for the specific, like on Hollywood and big movie productions, right? But I feel like a lot of the things that you can monetize right now are probably related to travel, right? Pre-visualization. Like those kind of things are like a no-brainer if you're gonna go on vacation. Like I'm not sure if everybody does that, and maybe I'm the only crazy one that does, but I go on Google Maps and try to figure out where the hotel is, where the whole thing is gonna be, to figure out if that's where I wanna go. There are a lot of tools right out there to help you plan your trip and see what everybody else is saying about the location. There's a lot of things that you gain when you can pre-visualize where you're gonna go. And I would be willing to pay for that. And I feel like there's a lot of ways that you can monetize, but I agree, it's a big challenge. I think like games is something that, you know, people are used to pay for it. And, you know, you have to create compelling stories that people will be willing to pay, so that production budget can go up.
You're waiting to chime in, Andrew.
I'd love to chime in on this one. You know, why you're hearing games is, you know, games drive revenue, which drives innovation. Since I was a kid back with the dinosaurs. So you get a lot of revenue coming into this. It builds up more and more innovation, more, you know, more and more changes, which then can trickle out to other industries. Like, I mean, there's a lot of uses and use cases for this in education. There's just not a lot of people paying for the education part of this. I mean, to the scale that they pay for games. I mean, what was it? Destiny came out, cost allegedly $500 million to come out, and it makes $500 million in 24 hours of existence. People are going to flock around that kind of stuff, but you know, the games are basically simulations, and in simulations, there's a lot of awesome medical stuff that are happening in VR right now that I know that's happening out in North Carolina. So medical training, education, there's just a billion things that you can simulate, but it seems to always start in games. One of the best examples of games is simulators in the military, and Thomas Furness had told a story on one of his panels decades ago about how, you know, they ran out to the end of their contract, they were out of money, and they had a last presentation to the military on flight simulators, and he puts the top brass general in there that he knows was a fighter pilot and gets him engaged in a high-end, high-intensity dogfight. And right at the climax of this dogfight, he stops the simulator, opens the cockpit, sticks his hand out and says, "I need the next quarter, please." And he got his like $800 million contract. So games drive a lot of things.
And you guys, Danilo, you actually touched on it. Tools versus hardware, right? And being a hardware developer, right? You must be looking down the road and from the analytics side and the content side, what's the chicken and the egg? What's going to drive it? I don't know if you guys saw the news today, but it just came out that Steam VR now has a toolkit for Unreal Engine 4, right? Which I was like, that's great, fantastic. Let's get the dev kit out specifically for this hardware, right? So, but what's going to drive actually getting this into people's hands, even in the games industry, right? Because these are all, at this point, still beta, or early stage. So what comes first, the content, the desire, or the hardware?
So for the last question, I just
sorry, let's do the last question. You went.
Yeah, then a quick jump to that.
Sure.
Just compared to the last, like in the year 2000 era, when the 3D graphics card booming and the real 3D games booming, I agree it's totally because of the monetary reasons. But this VR is a little different from the last time, the 3D graphics, in the sense because VR has more utilitarian value, just like the iPad. People can use it to do so many other things like modeling, education, simulation. So I think there will be other revenue source and there will be other more important applications more than gaming. And for the hardware and for the SDK side, I feel right now there's many different versions of hardware. It will add some burden to the developers. But right now, it still is a good situation because developing for different VR headsets is less painful than developing for PlayStation versus Xbox 360 because CPU architecture, how to program the AI is totally different. But for VR, the main game still runs on the same architecture, just adding shouldn't say few line, but minimum small amount of code to change the output, also input interactivity, that's it. But in the future, then I see companies that are making more VR dedicated silicons. That may cause more diversities, harder for the programmers. So the best case scenario, I hope right now maybe it's a good time to have open standard for VR. That's good for the future.
I agree. I feel like there's a lot to figure out and what's going to come first, like the chicken and the egg. I just want to not happen what happened with like 3D, right? That you the moment that everybody wanted to have like a 3D TV, it was hard to find. And then now that a lot of people have 3D TVs at home, you don't have content being produced for that anymore. So I feel like the industry, and I feel like Sony and PlayStation are doing like the right thing and trying to timing things right, so you actually have a mature day one experience, that you have a portfolio experience that the users will feel like, okay, I need to have this, and what else do I have coming up that I'm excited to play with. Again, not all the games they necessarily work in VR, but there are some few genres that work like really well. For example, horror games. For me, it's kind of like one of the best things I really like to play. But the moment that you start like meeting a ghost in virtual reality, like your perceptual system just like freaks out, right? It's a different kind of like reaction. It's much more immersive. And when you start talking about presence and what that can bring, I feel like not necessarily Hollywood's going to be the first one to monetize well, just because of the cost and the production and what people are expecting, but being able to learn and part of the education, or even the tourism side, I feel like that's going to be one of the first things that people will be willing to pay for.
It's a lot of money to learn, though, isn't it? I mean, just think about like, you know, how much all these manufacturers and hardware companies are putting in, or development teams are peeling off and creating, or 2 or 3 guys in their garage that are creating, right? It's a lot of time, energy, and resources, right?
Games are covered. I feel like games are, you know, they are Valve is, you know, totally into the game industry, and same thing with PlayStation. And I feel like Oculus is also started from the game side, and I feel like there's a lot of people with a lot of very interesting ideas that everybody's holding up until all of those devices are available, because no one wants to have, you know, like 2 or 3 same ideas. So there's a lot of things that I feel like are very key and compelling experiences that I'm working on with the team, but we're of course waiting for the day one of Morpheus to have that as a product over there.
Yeah, that's actually something that I'm worried about when I think about, you know, the development of the ecosystem of content creators. Is there seems to be kind of 2 camps. It seems to be like people are producing games and people are not producing games, and the people who are producing games, they all talk to each other. You go up to San Francisco and like there are meetups and everyone's talking and sharing, and you know, come into my studio and I'll show you what we're working on. And they're releasing little, you know, snippets of their projects and getting feedback and building that into like their next version. And I feel as though like that's really healthy. I mean, I don't see the same kind of ecosystem and community among other groups of content creators. And I think, you know, if we're going to get very serious about producing high quality content, there needs to be much more collaboration, much more knowledge sharing, much more transparency. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to do.
Do you think that'll happen?
Yeah, so the question again, just to get it clear in my mind, as you were saying, what's going to be the driver to make all of this happen?
Yeah, I mean, maybe playing devil's advocate, but here's the deal. You know, the Oculus set slipped and slipped, right? It was supposed to be promised a while ago, or I can't remember exactly when, but I know that then Facebook bought them last year, and now they're saying whenever. And so we're waiting for this hardware to come out. Everybody's trying to get excited about it, right?
I don't think they're trying to get excited.
Well, okay, so everybody's getting excited about it, but you know, I'm a gamer,
right,
but you know, my sister's not, and I can't see her dropping $400 on a headset for a novelty item, right? So there has to be meaningful content, meaningful value for her to do it. So what's going to come first? Is it going to be quality hardware, or is it going to be quality content? Or will we see these in the next year? Like, when is this going to happen?
Well, I mean, part of it is that the costs have to get to, you know, more of the masses type of level, and I think that happens in quantity. But there also has to be the driving force or driving need. I mean, the game needs to be like this great by itself without VR, and through the moon if you have VR. It just has to be the must-have type of thing that you can play it maybe without it, but if you have a headset and a tracker and this, that, and the other, it's the only way to really get the experience. You have to have that driver in there that makes it where they don't care how much it is. They go sell their car. They go, you know, They go take 3 jobs so they can buy that thing so they can play this game. I mean, I know gamers that do that, but I mean, it just has to be that extra compelling, whatever that trigger is, and somebody will stumble across it. And you know, like you said, everybody's coming to try to produce these helmets, but as soon as you have that Wolfenstein 3D or that Quake 3 that just drives this, yeah, following the games, everybody follows everything else. When you have that just killer game that comes out that is just that much more compelling in the head-mounted display, then they'll get the helmets out there.
So you're saying the content should not be exclusive to a VR platform? Because you're talking about being able to use something that you don't need.
I took Wolfenstein 3D and put a tracker on it, and everybody loved it. Okay, it should work in both, I think, but I think it can be that more compelling to be fully immersed than not fully immersed. So,
and you guys actually went a different route, not focusing on, at least the hardware you're creating isn't necessarily a games headset or a game focused headset. You decided to go a different route. Why did you guys do that?
Because we think for hardcore gaming, so actually it's a paradox. For hardcore gaming, people's expectation of reality is really high and already pushing the limit of modern CPU, GPUs. For running the HMD VR, we need to like double, triple the rendering power to achieve the same level of quality. So that seems like very hard to get consumer adoption by doing this. And right now we already see many VR. Okay.
I actually want to say that I think on the opposite side, right? Like to me, I feel like the most immersive experience that I saw on PlayStation and some of the coolest demos that I saw on Oculus, they will not necessarily try to push real, like, physics-based rendering. They were very cartoony and very like easy to render, and they were kind of like running at like a 90 frames per second in order to be to avoid like motion sickness. I'm a true believer. Like I saw like my initial demo running at 60 frames per second, and when I had it running at 120, people could jump and could go all the way around, and you're just not feeling sick.
Yeah.
And I feel like you don't necessarily need the reality graphics, like in order to be fully immersed in VR. I think on the game side,
exactly. Yeah, that's why I'm saying for the hardcore gamers, the type of game they play is try to duplicate the reality. So for this kind of applications, VR is harder to get big advantage. Instead, some other type of games like light games is much easier to get mass adoption. For example, if you want to stimulate the reality, any flaws people will notice, the virtual reality will break. But if we simulate something that never happened, it's not on the Earth, something purely abstract, or something on the space, people have an easier time to adopt. Even with some flaws, people think, oh, maybe that's the way it is. So, and for us, we think, we already see many other applications of VR. For example, education, communication, and the theme parks, business, like showcase a new product to the clients, real estate. There are so many different applications. We also see in the future, there is augmented reality or holographic augmented reality, and this will start to merge with the VR. We think in the future, the AR and the VR will fully mix together, becomes the same thing.
So these are, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. How many have experienced the lightsaber training with Sixth Sense? I mean, that's very compelling. I mean, you're in there, you got your hands in there, you can see your body, and 3-4 seconds into the game, you're training for lightsabers. You're real. It's there. You're Luke Skywalker at that point. Actually, with 2 lightsabers, a little weird, but still, I mean, that's pretty compelling. That boiled out into a full-blown game. Let me have it. Here's my money. So yeah, that's the compelling stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things about games. Like, I feel like in games, you always want it to be you get inspired by like the Spider-Man movie, but you kind of like wanted to take the action and save the day, right? Like, the games let you do it, let you be whatever kind of hero you want to be. And then I'm like, yes, this is like a no-brainer. When you're talking about the movie, that's a bit more challenging, right? Because then you want to give like some interactivity, some way that they can feel like participating, not just watching. But that should be said, it is not necessarily like a requirement to be interactive. I just feel like there's a lot to be learned on this media, especially on the video side. But I have been working a lot on actually mixing games and videos. And one of the things that I like a lot in VR is actually to simulate that you are inside a movie theaters. If you guys haven't seen any of those, I can't show you the version that I have, but it kind of like simulates a lot of those. There are similar apps that simulate you being inside of a movie theater and you can watch content like in 3D. And the first reaction that I had from a lot of people that saw what I was showing up on the Morpheus side was like, wow, this is just amazing. I now have an IMAX theater in my house for what? I don't know the price yet of the Morpheus. It wasn't being released, but it's probably going to be much less than you buying a projector and try to have a screen and a home theater space in your room to deliver that. So I feel like there's a lot of other things that you can do with VR.
An IP owner, should I be spending my time, energy, if I want to make money on this in the near future, should I be doing anything other than games right now?
I'm a true believer in that, and I have been working on what we call like the VR video framework, where I'm being able to deal with 2D, 3D, 360, and 360 3D content, not just as a download, as a lot of the apps out there. I actually have a patent on how to stream 360 content, really focus on the quality of what the user is looking at, because really no one's going to step back like 4 years and be like waiting for a movie to download to start watching. So I feel like there is a lot of those things that are in the works, and I'm a total believer. And I really feel like I can't wait for the devices to be out there. It's just that you need to understand that there is a risk, right? No one has a crystal ball that can guarantee what's going to happen, but I'm on the believers' side.
Well, as a developer, if you want to develop in this medium but you don't want to do games, there is a phenomenal amount of money spent in visualization in medical. Telepresence medicine is a lot of doctors have a lot of money and they're throwing a lot of it in there. So that's another, really big use. The only stumbling block for me to dive into something like that is the regulatory hurdles that you have to do. I don't like that stuff. I don't like the paperwork on that. But there is a lot of money and a lot of other visualization type things of the data that, you walk through somebody's body as it's beating because they're on an MRI being scanned, and you say, oh, well, here's that thing for our operation right here that we have to get to. So that kind of stuff.
Actually, if you guys, the video is in French, but if you go to Vimeo and look for like Gyropet in 360 cam, you can see that they have this very tiny camera that they put on the forehead of the surgeon, and that little camera can actually live broadcast. So you can have an audience, maybe in another country, learning how to do that procedure in a way that it's so immersive that they kind of like start feeling, okay, I'm learning from it. So I feel like there are a lot of fields that VR will be touching. And I would just be more conservative on probably because I just spent my last 8 years going to work every day inside of the Sony Pictures offices in Culver City and seeing a lot of the big movie production being done. And, I feel like a lot of those experiences right now will be short form, and they will more like on the marketing side to help immerse the users into the experience of what's trying to be told on the movie, and you feel like more compelling to go there. But I can't wait to the day that you're going to have millions of those devices. And of course, mobile brings a huge opportunity, especially with the 4K phones coming out, that you start watching a lot of content through that. You just feel like you need to have a critical mass, before you can actually create those big productions. Otherwise, you're just going to do the first one and you're going to go broke.
Yeah, but to that point, Clifton, are we going to have that critical mass?
I was a little bit more optimistic until this panel when we
I'm glad to be optimistic.
and I'm making a big bet. Yeah, I think it's going to be a long time until there's like until my mom is picking up her phone and slapping it to her head. But I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's a problem.
You know what I feel like you will make your mom to put the headset? 360 personal cameras that you're actually shooting up or recording like a birthday party. Like I have 2 daughters and I've been, believe me, all the time with an iPad trying to show what's going on. And if you just have like a 360 camera in there, then grandma in Brazil can look anywhere they want. And,
that's
and
possible.
As long as you make the experience, and that's the way I come back to PlayStation. And you need to have something that, someone can just like unpack the box and plug it into the TV or plug it into the headset and make it work. It cannot be as crazy as some of the 200 setup you have to do in order to make a PC to run with VR today. And hopefully all of that's going to be streamlined.
Hopefully.
Yeah, but Danilo,
I'm not convinced that that's going to like happen like anytime like really soon. And so I think, to the degree that content is being produced for, the consumer that is willing to overcome those obstacles and like are willing to, go out and pay any price for like a crappy experience. And to me, that's not like mass market, right? Like, we were talking in the other room, is John from, whichever state in the middle of the country going to, pay $300 for this headset and, pay $5 for an experience? Probably not. But if it's, 17-year-old Sally and, where all her friends are talking about something, she's going to punk down, she's going to find a way to find that content. And I think, so it may not be tomorrow that it's going to be broadly available, but I don't think that's a problem. I think as long as we're making awesome content, for people who are going to love it and go crazy for it, I think
it goes back to
that's a good foundation.
I agree. As long as you have a good content, that if you appeal to the gamers, that they are there with the wallets, willing to pay for it because but you need
and
to
they are
them
paying. They're paying now
for the games.
There is
Andrew wants to
commercialization.
chime in real quick.
Well, I have a prediction if I'm allowed to go away from VR and into AR a little bit. Am I allowed to do that?
Sure.
Okay. So it has to get ubiquitous. And what I see from an external point of view, and I'm going to clarify external, if Magic Leap and Microsoft have their way, and I think at least one of them will, if not both, they're going to, you mentioned your mom's not going to pick up your phone and put it into.
My mom just found Facebook that long ago.
I understand.
And I don't want to have to explain to her how to use a headset.
I can see it externally. And I believe that they're working towards is they're planning on getting rid of your phone, getting rid of your desktop, getting rid of your laptop and your tablet and putting it all into a head-mounted display to where the interface is all virtual or augmented virtual. So your phone is on your head, your computer is on your head, when you're walking around that way. Then it's ubiquitous and this stuff becomes natural to us. And that's not as far off as people are thinking it is.
That sounds like a really dark dystopian sci-fi movie.
They're freaking. I mean, I personally, I want Tony Stark's interface today, and HoloDeck or the HoloLens. I'm sorry, HoloLens is promising that, and so is Magic Leap. So now, anybody that has signed the NDA from Magic Leap can't say any of that stuff. I can, but. I mean, that's what it promises is that you have Tony Stark's Iron Man interface and that right there at your fingertips. Then it becomes ubiquitous. It becomes something that the kids grow up with and it's just natural to them. And all these, a lot of these discussions become irrelevant then. So.
You've been like chomping at the bit to say something. So
Sure.
We've got a question in the front row.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking this way. You guys are so compelling. Yes.
The question that came on my mind is what is that barrier that's stopping just any game from being porting into a headset? Because when we talk about the magic of VR, I think people are talking about some wearable display, because obviously games are immersive, they're full 360 environments in a lot of cases where you could look all around on television. So what's the barrier, that small barrier? Because I think we seem like games are the low-hanging fruit to this, but what would you say are what's that barrier that says why couldn't every game tomorrow?
From my point of view, the only barrier to entry is in a three-dimensional world, is being able to have the tracker take over part of the joystick, part of the movement type of input. I mean, basically what you just, to turn your head and look around is looking around in the space. And as long as you get that little bit of the interface working with the game, then you can put it in any head-mounted display as far as that, concerned. Well, you don't want it to, I mean, there is a lot of the higher end technical stuff that I just want to speak on a simple level to it, is just you get the tracker working to where all you have to do is look around and you're in the game, and pretty much you can put any game in that way from my point of view. Anyway, I'll shut up there.
Do you want to comment on that?
First, the last question about, well, I can answer this first. I think one of the biggest barrier is natural way of input, because when playing TV games, you can see your hands, you can grab a controller, but in VR it's fully blocked. I cannot see my hand. So we observe all the VR users, like 98% of the user after, initial 10 minutes, they wow, so great. But after 10 minutes, the first thing they will say is, where's my hand? How can I interact? So this happened to be also one of the things we are solving. With the mobile headset, we have hand tracking built in. People can directly manipulate virtual objects or play with virtual things. And about AR, I think not only Magic Leap and HoloLens, we are also doing holographic AR. And we don't need NDA. We already have our live demo, live see-through from the headset lens, holographic AR effect. You can check it out in our Kickstarter website, the second video from the top. It is, we are using different principles to do that, but the result is the same. Holographic objects floating in the air, people can manipulate. And the applications we are thinking about, there are so many. For example, people from different places, they can sit down at the same table, play with the same virtual chess. That's my answer.
Yeah, but just to explain that, on the PlayStation side, you have the PlayStation Moves, and you can actually, using the head-mounted display, find out where the controller is, and the same thing with Sixth Sense. Like they just put a headset on you and say, hey, go and find where the lightsaber is. So I feel like some of those things are already being figured out. You do have to consider a lot of things when you're developing a game or trying to adapt your game to VR. I really believe that the best experiences will be the ones that are built from the ground up, because the other way around is almost like trying to put color in a black and white movie. It can be a lot of real work and can be very time consuming, and at the end you're going to be in an experience that's going to be cool but not necessarily made. For example, UI, and if anyone that had worked with 3D before and saw like 3D subtitles, like, there's a lot of things when your eyes try to convert to something that's really close and also really far at the same time, so you have to account in putting all the UI into the space, so not necessarily like trying to float in front of you. It can be, but there's a lot of things that you have to consider on how your eyes will be converging from something that's really close to you and far. But definitely games are already in a 3D space, and you can definitely adjust in an easier way. But I'm super excited to keep developing a lot of the tools to help creating immersive video experiences, just because I like a lot the sense of presence on being able to be at a location that I was shooting something, and then I was looking at in 360. I was actually having the feeling that I was there. But you also have to have a lot on the audio production, that you have a binaural audio or something that gives you, that immersive audio to help with the video, so you really feel like you are there. And I feel like there's a lot of applications that we can do and create content that people will want to be in music concerts and being in another experience, that the camera can take you in places that you as an audience going to a soccer or a football game, you just can't be in some of the areas. So there's a lot of things that you gain on that side. And yes, there's a lot of challenges on resolution of the video and bandwidth, but I feel like the way the industry is going, it's going to be mostly for gamers right now, and a lot of the other industry will start coming together.
So we talked games, medical, education, military, government, some other things. If I'm traditional entertainment, NBC, And thinking about where I want to dedicate resources right now, should I even be looking at VR?
I think you should use you can use VR in order to try to say that.
I didn't say can you use it. I said should I even be bothering with it?
You're gonna
Is
get
it-
a lot of press. If you create something that's very unique and very different from what other people have done, you're gonna get a lot of press. So you can get like a really good ROI on your investment. And I have been working with a few of the clients that I have worked in the past on how they can create those experiences that people feel like, oh my God, I need to go to the next event. I need to be in person for the next thing, or I need to go to that movie because now I understand what's going on. The biggest thing the presence and VR can give it to you is that you can really be immersed, and you're gonna understand much better what was that situation. Like, for example, journalism in VR. You can't see like what happened on the World Trade Center to the screen, but I believe that if you were seeing something like that in VR, it can actually be able to look all around at all the things that were going on that the camera was not able to capture.
Let's
you
get everybody.
much more
We got to
emotion.
wrap up. I'm sorry, but I want to get everybody else's perspective on this. I mean, because it's digital Hollywood, right?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they look at what the percentages of people that have access to VR, but kind of as his point is, VR's got a lot of, it's a lot of sex and sizzle. I mean, it definitely captures everybody's imagination instantaneously. So they can get a lot of excess play off of that to get the PR that they want from the VR.
You're gonna coin that phrase?
Oh, I guess. Yeah, PR from VR, because I mean, everybody wants to know, oh, that experience is awesome. And you'll get like, thousands of people on Reddit talking about it, and people, saying things of, oh, I imagine it's like this. And somebody says, oh, I was in it. It's like this. And then you get 500 people commenting and retweeting it and all the stuff that you want, because captures everybody's attention.
Yeah, but Reddit's early adopter still, right?
Well, but I mean,
Twitter is still pretty much
Reddit was one example.
a step
It's
beyond
social
early adopter,
media.
right.
In social media, you'll get a phenomenal bang for your buck.
Sure.
In the tens of thousands of retweets and that off of one VR experience.
What do you think, Clifton?
I think it's a good point. I think it's a trick question, because I believe they are spending money. I mean, maybe not a ton. And so the question should they be spending more money? And I think it depends. I think you have to take a scalpel and be very strategic about where you're investing, where you're putting your early tests, not expecting a lot of sort of ROI measurement, and not it's probably not going to drive a lot of real engagement. But I think I imagine for some shows, it might make sense. It might make sense to, as a part of a larger campaign, to activate, a new season or something like that. And I think that's the sort of the immediate next step for traditional media companies, is to really think about how this fits into the overall portfolio shows.
And before I lose that thought, if you combine that, right, with what marketing can bring, and then you can also have a big brand and you can create consumer products, then you can create that awesome Star Wars demo that people feel like, oh, you gotta see that, come here, and then you have like the first 2-3 minutes of that experience for free, and then okay, you just finished this level, do you want to go to this next one? And then you, in an episodic way, you go and keep charging. So I feel like there's a lot of ways that you can combine marketing opportunities and consumer products opportunities, and we have done that with a lot of the big brands in the past. That marketing comes with some of the funding, and then it's like, okay, but I want to create this whole experience, and we believe that the consumers will pay for that, and then you make a deal with the consumer product and you make that something that the users will want to purchase.
Before we toss it back to these guys, I'd like to just ask, especially, we'll start here, from the hardware developer that's doing a almost openly non-gaming headset. And I don't want to, here's where I would like to be, but very realistic, very candid. Where will we be as far as VR that we've all talked about, say 5 years from now? That's a long time in technology, right? Yue?
VR, I think the headset will become smaller, lighter, maybe as small as a normal glass, and can do AR at the same time. That's
Yeah, and I'm looking also that more of the head-mounted displays, they would look more like the Avegant Glyph. Not sure if everybody have tried or seen. It kind of looks like the Beats, like headphone.
Yeah.
That's like pretty big, bulky, and very comfortable. But it's just audio when you want to listen to music, but when you want to watch some kind of content, you can just like flip it, and then you have the screen for you, and that's kind of like it blew my mind when I saw it for the first time. So I feel like in 5 years from now, you're gonna have sunglasses size head-mounted display. You're gonna have a lot of other options that would be very easy for the user to just have it hanging out here, not necessarily on my backpack the way I have it here with like 200 cables that I have to put it together.
In 5
and then
years?
to make it work. In 5 years, is going to be the Avegant Glyph is going to be released later this year. And I'm just seeing that the quality is going to get much better in a price point that people will feel like, okay, but it makes a lot of sense to have it. So 5 years from now, I can see a lot of those devices out there and being able to create content in high quality that you will be able to monetize.
Clifton?
Practical. $3-4 billion being spent on content. 20 million headsets out there in the US, and there is a lot of content libraries that have been built up over the last 5 years that need to be distributed at, and monetized. I think that's where we're headed. Still not like massive, but I think that's where we are.
Now, in 5 years, from what I see the trajectory going, we'll have very robust, ruggedized, out-of-home entertainment experiences and head-mounted displays, and different forms of head-mounted displays is what every kid is going to be asking for Christmas in 5 years. So put your money behind the winners in
And the
the
10-year-old.
head-mounted display technology, and in 5 years you'll be cashing out pretty big.
That's great. So that said, we started a little bit late, so we're running a little bit late. From you guys. Yes, sir.
What about additional peripherals in the future, like
That's a great question.
omnidirectional treadmills?
I think they need to be very easy to set up and to get in and come out of it. Like I have been trying a lot of those different gadgets that you have on a treadmill from Omni, and you can do a lot of stuff, and you can put it like fully immersed. I saw like those big spheres in a Google I/O that you can be in there and like walk around, and a lot of people following. There's I think there's a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of limitations on what the users have as a space, and they're also committed to. I feel like right now the way the headsets are so big and heavy, it's already asking for them a lot to put that, right? And I feel like if you have the controllers, it's pretty cool. I do want that the head-mounted displays will have cameras like your solution, right? That you will have a pretty good tracking, even if they need to put more cameras or other kind of technology that will let you interact in an easier way. And I feel like Vive is doing a pretty good job on that side.
What do you think, Yue? Peripherals to go with your headset? Is that your next Kickstarter?
I think peripheral is very important for VR more than any other things we have seen before. And I think because different people, different use case will be more than, even for just a treadmill, maybe there will be more than one company providing slightly different solutions. So the whole landscape of peripherals will be very large. And not only for walking, tracking, maybe also for tactile feedback, like gloves, temperature feedback, even smell feedback.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
This is a narrative long form question.
You have like 30 seconds.
In the game realm, the physicality is a lot of fun. You're moving around, you move your arms, you move your neck. In long form, unless it's just wrap around 3D, you want that movement as well. What do you guys think will be maybe a deterrent that that's a lot of movement in the body, physicality for 90 minutes? Would that be a problem?
I think it's going to be great exercise. Oh, I mean, I witnessed Dance Dance Revolution coming into the arcades was phenomenal. I saw kids that were grossly overweight at the beginning of the summer be almost underweight by the end of the summer because of Dance Dance Revolution. So moving around is a great thing for gamers. Most gamers don't. 90 minutes is a great marathon. As long as they build up to it, it's a great, I mean, check with your doctor first.
I have been experimenting with technology that lets you like use your hands, and yes, even after like a few minutes of you been moving around, start like getting some of the fatigue, and there are things that you should consider. I feel like options are the best thing that you can give to the user right now, that they can use the controller, or if they just want to grab something really quick right here, they can go in here and they can do like that way. But I agree, there's more motion that we can put the gamers on, that's going to be more healthy for them.
And to just rephrase your question, I also thought about this. That's due to a big difference between virtual reality and other kind of media we used before. In all other kind of media, we users have superhuman abilities. Like a TV, I can flip a channel just right here, control something that's 5 meters away, something really complex. But in virtual reality, we try to simulate reality. We become normal human. We lost all the superhuman abilities. Everything we need to grab, everything we need to see or move is a real scale, one-to-one scale. That's why something in virtual reality will become more difficult than traditional media, like shooting game.
But for example, you have a microphone on a head-mounted display, right? Not sure if you guys have been watching. We're using like smartwatch, but I barely take notes anymore. I just like talk to like it's like my personal assistant. Say, hey, remind me about this, and make sure there's not doing anything. And there's a lot of things that you can communicate that is just like much easier than you try to find your phone and put your password and find the app that you're gonna launch to start typing, to bring the keyboard so then you can type. So I feel like there's a lot of things that even voice will let you bring on, and I feel like there's gonna be a precise control that you wanna have in your hands, and you wanna have sometimes some words, but a few times you wanna just grab and access something. If there is the hand track, you also much better. I think there's more inputs that you can get, into the hand of the users, much better the experience will be.
Right. So I think for virtual reality, we can design application, maybe two kinds of applications. One is to exactly mimic the physical world, physical scale. Another one still give people kind of superhuman abilities. So in the second category of games or applications, people can still be very efficient. And the first category is more people just want to exercise. So I want to do things like real.
Great. We'll do one more, and then we have to go.
Just look.
Did you answer the first question?
Should I identify? I can't see with the lights up here.
She had a question
We
over there.
had two more? Okay, two more. But let's work this way.
From a mother's perspective on kids today, and in China they exercise their kids before they start the day, they start the classroom, and it helps to stimulate the brain. I was wondering what kind of neurological studies are being done in such a way as a proponent for this, because what I'm thinking is if the brain is stimulated in the classroom, like worldwide, even if it's 5 seconds before they start their class, that they will have a better attention span and they will be more engaged. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what kind of neurological studies are being done, because we know when you stimulate the right and the left side of the brain at the same time, that there's a higher propensity for retaining information.
So are you guys following any studies specifically about how VR, AR are going to affect the brain, especially for children?
You should
Or you just want
definitely
to make money off of this?
you should definitely look into what Nolan Bushnell is doing. And I'm trying to, what's Nolan's company's, John? It's Brain. Anyway, he's doing some really cool stuff in education and gamifying education, where they're able to train something where they retain it longer and learn it quicker. It's pretty amazing stuff. So look what Nolan's doing, and that'll show you a lot of that.
And if you're not familiar, Nolan Bushnell is probably most well known for Atari and Chuck E. Cheese.
And Chuck E. Cheese.
Video games and kids.
I like for
and
the
pizza.
little Adam robot that he did.
Little
That was
Adam
awesome. But yeah.
And I have
I'm sorry, go
talked
ahead.
to one education application writer. He think virtual reality can write some applications that really help education, because in the real world, people get distracted, all the different lights, different sounds. But in VR environment, it can be really controlled. So
There's also a company that I know of in Ireland. I think it's like Immersive Education or something like that. And their specific goal is to develop applications in VR that like help improve the classroom setting. I don't know what research is available on that website, but that might be a good like starting point.
And I'll just correct myself because Nolan will kill me if I don't. It's Brain Rush is what Nolan's doing. So.
Let's do one more and then we got to go.
Mine is on the content development side. Outside of the gaming industry, let's say you're developing content for the VR industry, does it make sense to specialize in one function or one vertical, medical or coach or sports, for example? Or they're still too small, they'll be too small in the short term to be focusing all your efforts into one sub-industry of VR?
I believe you have to have an industry expert in the field that you're wanting to put your stuff into, so you should focus on what you're best at and go after that.
There's scale to do only medical, to do only sports, to do only one. There'll be short-term scale for that, or it's going to be too small scale?
No, I think if you go into sports or you go into medical, you should definitely have industry experts and know what you're doing. Do that, grow that as far as you can before you branch out. I mean, anybody else, please.
I mean, I think one of the challenges that
I'm like waiting for someone to-
not specializing, where you'll run into it and not specializing is just, there is just so much sort of knowledge to sort of gain, and like you want to really make sure you get down that learning curve like as fast as you can. And so to the degree that you can specialize and move down the learning curve like really quickly, like that's probably the way you want to go.
Yes, in my previous job in Sao Paulo, 7-8 years ago, before I moved here to LA, we actually did a lot of live broadcast for the medical community, like how to do, plastic surgery and a lot of those things, like training other doctors. And there were so much specific requirements that they wanted that I feel like, yes, you should specialize, in one of the areas and find, the funding that you would need in order to make this business as successful. But I can see a lot of the education being, a big factor of what's going to be able to be very viable and be able to monetize, just because you will be able to have people on the other side of the pond, really interested in paying for accessing that great, technique that is brand new, and they want to ask questions and understand exactly how it's done. That, on that side, the books and the videos not going to give you that size or that scale that you would need and that presence to really understand how to make that happen.
Anything to add? All right, with that, thank you very much, esteemed panelists. You guys know everything. And I'm sure they're all going to hang around a little bit and press the flesh in the business networking way, Andrew.